I welcome you all. Hi, I'm Shiti. I am the founder and CEO of Breathe Happy. At Breathe Happy, we believe health starts at home, quite literally. Our mission is to put the health before healthcare. Based on the three pillars of move, breathe, and connect, our online yoga and mindfulness classes with world's best teachers are as unique as the teachers themselves. So do try one for yourself at letsbreathehappy.com. Our events are in spirit of our classes as authentic and as genuine, bringing the best of information at home with Talk Happy, where we meet celebrities and people with experience in scientific fields. Move Happy, where we break down a particular posture or a physical movement. And Mind Happy, where we share breathing techniques and meditation. Today, on a Talk Happy edition, it is my pleasure to welcome Julie Fedele in today's edition of Talk Happy. Julie comes with a solid 10 years of experience in healthcare industry with multinational corporations as well as big startups like Babylon Health. And this is her startup experience led her to become an active mentor, not just in startup communities, but also taking on venture partner roles and becoming an angel investor. She's recognized as one of the top 35 angel investors in the UK, reshaping the ecosystem. And it is her laser focus on companies, femtech, built by women founders that makes her stand out. But why am I talking so much? Julie, welcome on the platform.
Thank you so much. What a lovely introduction.
So Julie, before we go any further, let's start right at the start. And when I say start, I mean when you were a baby. So tell us a little about what did you want to be when you were a baby? When you just close your eyes, what was that image that would come to your mind that you wanted to be? And has that journey panned out? And how are you here? How do you feel?
Wow, how much time do you have? I could talk forever about this. So I actually was, I'm in London right now, but I wasn't born here, obviously. You can tell by my accent. I'm originally from Australia, and I was born in a country town called Mildura in country Victoria. And I can't say I had an actual image of what that thing was I was searching for. Like I never thought I wanted to be a lawyer or a doctor or an accountant. Like none of that came to me. But what I did know from a really young age, I was always really curious about questioning everything. And from, you know, as early as 8 or 9, I remember saying to myself and to others who, you know, my family may have thought I was a bit mad, but, you know, I was always into like, how can we reimagine the future? So there has to be more to life than this. So that has been a theme of search throughout my whole life. And I think that is really through my, you know, journey of my, you know, personal growth and professional growth, what has brought me to right at this point, always wanting to reimagine and, you know, invoke new things into what our future could possibly be. And that's kind of what I do for a job as well. So, you know, it seemed to pan out for me.
Very nice. Thanks for sharing that. And would you say that's what got you into angel investing? Can you speak a little to how did angel investing start?
So, and I've shared this story with you, so I'm comfortable to share it, and I've written an article about it, so it's out there. But actually, how I got to this point of really being focused on angel investing and my investment thesis was that 3 years ago, when I moved, nearly 3 years ago, when I moved here to London, I had some time to myself to really, you know, move countries and set my life up with my son and my husband. And, you know, for the last 15 years, I'd been just, you know, working, school, and never had a moment to myself. But 3 years ago, I had 3 months to myself to really be with one's thoughts. Now, that could sound really exciting to some people, but it scared the hell out of me. And depending on the day, I either say I had a breakthrough or a breakdown, because really it got me questioning, you know, what I was doing with my life. I was just climbing this corporate ladder, and then it felt like I turned around and I realized I'd climbed the wrong one. So what I started to do through that process was question, what do I care about? What am I here to do? What's my purpose? Like, everyone has these questions. And for me, it was around, I always loved the startup community. I had my own startup, which I can talk about later, about what I learned, but I had not really closed the topic on that area within my life. And I was an active mentor, but I wanted to do more. And so that more for me ended up in really supporting female founders, and also having a really laser focused investment thesis around femtech. And I can go into, how femtech is the most underinvested area in healthcare. Women's health is really widely underinvested in and unknown. And so for me, that's where I started, wanting to use my resources, not just my time, but my money, to support that area. And that's how actually I got into angel investing. And so how I learnt about angel investing, I took a micro school course, because what I'm really loving about this whole space is that it's been democratized. I had all of these myths that you had to be a millionaire to be able to angel invest, but actually anyone can do it. Just how you can go through a process of really understanding the terminology. And a part of what my mission is to also support people on their investing journey. And if I can do it, anyone can.
Brilliant, brilliant. I would like to disentangle the three big points that you talk about. First one is breakthrough versus breakdown. That's such a lovely way to put it. I mean, silence is hugely underrated in our world today. With meditation, silent retreats, a lot of effort is therefore given to sitting and meditating on what you're doing with life, and which is what you touch upon. Then your thesis on femtech, which definitely I'd delve deeper into, and your experience with startup, in addition to how angel investing began. So let's disentangle each one by one and start talking about the startup experience. There are very few investors who have actually been on the other side. You are one of them. And I'd love to understand, what are your top 3 learnings from your startup experience?
Yeah, so I actually launched my startup straight after I finished business school in 2012, and it was a spectacular fail. Like, I will be very honest about that. But I did learn a lot. And I guess one of the big learnings for me was I didn't realize how my ego was stopping me from progressing forward. And what I mean by that is, I was saying the words, fail fast. It's great to fail fast, to learn and pivot and move on. But actually, when it came to me actually doing that for myself and my own startup, I was paralyzed. I was really scared to fail. And that started on this journey of, actually, it was self-loathing initially, of, oh, I'm not good enough. I can't actually do this. And so I did have, a part of my failure was because I didn't move fast enough and pivot when I learnt that my product that I was delivering to the market wasn't a product market fit, essentially. But what stopped me was my ego. So I really took away from that experience that, first and foremost, I had to get my mind right if I really want to be in this business. And it did not take me, I'd love to say it took me a couple of months to learn that, but it took me years. And I mean 5+ years, to really be able to openly speak about it, to feel confident about my learning and my journey. The second part to that is to pivot and move fast. So for me, I was getting information from the market that I just didn't have a product that was fitting within this ecosystem. In the US, it was the business that I was looking to launch in Australia was going completely gangbusters. It was amazing. But the market I was in, it just wasn't ready. So, the saying that a good idea at the wrong time is just as bad as a bad idea at any time. So I didn't quite catch on to that. I caught onto that too late. And so I didn't move with what really needed to happen for my business. And that was also an underlying ego thing, because I'm like, no, this idea is great. I know I can make it work, but actually I couldn't, hence why I closed it down. And the third one around is really around product market fit. So if as a founder, that is what you're searching for, and if you can't really find that, then I think it's each person or each founder like has to sit and just think about what am I actually delivering to the market, and is it valuable to the consumers I'm targeting? And if not, then it's a time to pause and rethink what they're doing. So they were my 3 huge learnings, and the biggest one was around basically myself and my mindset.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that. It's always hard to speak about failures. Our society is geared, in fact, human beings are geared to talk about successes. So it's not always easy. So completely appreciate that. Once again, you talk about mindset, overcoming your ego, and the product market fit. Before I talk about the bigger things like mindset and female investing space, can I quickly ask you, for the early stage startups and early stage founders, what are the biggest clues that you are getting to a product market fit? And equally, what are the clues that you're miles away from there?
I mean, I guess if you're a D2C business and you're going out to consumers and you're getting great word of mouth and feedback, like feedback is key in the early days, and it's either consumer feedback, or if you're in a B2B space, it's feedback from the businesses that you're working for. If you're getting traction within that space and you're starting to, grow and iterate on the feedback. So, for me, I was getting feedback that it was really hard. I had a pop-up business, like popping up, going from clicks to bricks in a semi-permanent fashion. That was my startup. And I was getting feedback from the online retailers that actually they were finding it really hard to connect with their customers and get feedback whilst they were popping up. Now, I didn't action their feedback to me fast enough. What I was doing was actually having my business plan in place and saying, no, these are the 4 steps that I want to take. And thank you for your feedback, but I know better. If I would have actioned that and iterated really quickly, I would have got to a different product, absolutely, but I would have gotten to a successful company potentially. And so for early stage founders, I always talk about making sure that you're working in partnership to the consumer or the business that you are delivering to. And I'm a big believer in doing things that don't scale, because in the early days, particularly in the B2B space, you may be doing things that you can't scale for all clients, but you want to make sure that you're testing that really quickly with your consumers and you're delighting them. And so that's something that I've learned being a startup founder myself, in addition to being on the other side of the fence and being in the corporate and working with a startup. And so the biggest thing is work in partnership with your customers, and they are your best friends, and you should be talking to them, if not multiple times a day, iterating, can be up to, 3 to 5 times a day, which I didn't do. So that was my big failure. So that is something that I always say to founders as well.
Nice. So partnership with customers being critical, mindset being critical, and these are some of the things that we will be talking actively about. But just before that, since you shared your thesis, which was laser focused on female founders, why that, and what are the changes that you've seen recently?
So the reason why, when I came to angel investing and really thought about, if I'm going to invest a certain amount of my money, and not in safe equity or not keeping it in the bank, but I'm deciding to invest, potentially my savings, right, in another financial instrument, who do I want to really invest in and support? So that was my first starting point. And so then I looked around the industry, because I'm quite a passionate person. I started to get really frustrated when I started learning about the stats behind how many females were invested in. So it's like less than 2% of women get venture funding.
Wow.
And less than 4% of diverse teams get venture funding. And this really annoyed me. I would swear, but I won't, because I know we're live, but it really annoyed me to the nth degree. So what I decided is, well, I want to support this space. So how do I support people who are underinvested in? And that's what led me to my thesis around, I want to support females, because what we do know around, there's all literature and loads of information available, but we just don't have the same networks, the same opportunities, and the same same opportunities to be in front of ventures like our male counterparts. And that's changing, but I want to be a part of that change. So that's why I invest in female founders. And another part of that is around having a laser focus on the female femtech, because femtech is really underinvested in. And I'm obviously very passionate about women's health.
Okay, so while we get Shruti back with a little bit of technical trouble that we're having right now, Julie, maybe I can ask the next question that we were thinking of. So um, let's go down a little more into the weeds now. So uh, as a female founder, what do you think we should be thinking differently, and all in terms of both raising as well as building customers and partnerships with businesses? So as a female founder, what are your tips and what do you think we should be thinking differently?
Thank you. So in terms of around partnerships and I'll start with the first one around fundraising. So whenever I'm talking to female founders about fundraising, so there are a few decisions you want to make in terms of, first of all, do you want to get institutional funding? Do you want to raise your first round with angels? And I would always say, be really careful in terms of, not careful, but consider who you want investing in your company. When you're a very early stage founder, you need people in your corner, and you want to make sure that those investing in your company are not, looking at every corner for the returns that you're going to give them, because at the early stages, that's just not going to happen. So when I invest in companies, the first thing I think about is, I'm just putting that money to a side. I personally don't think about it. So I put the money aside and then I get to work. And what I mean by when I get to work is, I want to support the founder, and anything I can do that's related, they need help, that I have in my background, so my professional experience. In addition to that, what's my network? Who can I connect them to? What other angel investors I can connect them to? What other VC funds can connect them to? So my job there as an early stage founder, when I'm mentoring them, is, what value can I add? I would be really cautious if your investors, when you're doing a fundraising, are already asking you about returns and when do you think you're going to sell or exit, because that's not what they should be thinking about. They should be thinking about supporting you first and foremost. Mm-hmm. So that's the advice I'd give around fundraising. And I think in terms of B2B partnerships, if you're a business that has a B2B SaaS platform, like that has been predominantly my experience, but working for the corporate, I would say, and I know this might be a bit I don't know. It's fine. I'll just say it because this is my truth. When early stage founders that are working on a B2B product, I do recommend them to find an SME, like a list of SME relationships and businesses they can work with. Now, the reason why is I work for a big corporate and I've worked for big corporates. And we are not great at working with early stage founders or even Series A companies, to be perfectly honest, depending how big the corporate is. Now, this is a blanket statement. Some organizations may be great. I mean, but in my experience, it's really tough for a bigger, multinational organization to work with a Series A company. The startup needs it needs a lot of time and a lot of guidance and, money and support, which the corporate doesn't have the availability to give it to them on their timeline. So this is why I suggest early stage B2B companies to really be very focused and smart on who they choose as their first customer reference group. So a customer reference group is when you have a quid pro quo relationship with those organizations. And basically you're agreeing with this B2B, with this business, that they're going to test, learn, and iterate with you. Your product is not going to be perfect, but they're going to also ensure that you're improving your product as well as giving you a testimonial. And that gives you an amazing platform and revenue to then go to more of a bigger corporate. So I see it as a step-by-step process. I've actually got a page written on this. If that's Shiti, I can share that with you, because that's what I share with the founders I mentor, because I'm really quite passionate about, when I see startups and they see that I've worked at Bupa, it's a very large healthcare organization. And they come to me and say, Julie, there is amazing things that we can do for, the millions of customers that Bupa has, as an example. And I'm like, absolutely, but just not right now, because the company's not ready for you right now in your shape and form. And equally, our procurement process will probably kill you, because it'll take you 2 years to get a signed contract. And that's just the way that bigger corporates operate. Mm-hmm. So my advice is I do, and I'm happy to be challenged and build on what I say, but this is my current experience as well.
Yeah, that sounds perfectly in line with what we've experienced in early stages. And it sort of goes back to your statement of doing things that don't scale. I mean, Airbnb today is like a global corporation spread across countries. But at the start, the founders themselves would go to hosts' homes, get professional photographers, set their couches, take professional photos, and then upload them themselves. It's hard to imagine that a multi-billion-dollar organization with global presence would do that, but they did it.
Yeah.
So totally with you there. I then wanted to ask that because you mentioned that mindset is such a critical component of what you do. So whether it is overcoming your ego and sitting and thinking hard where you need to change your stance, clearly listening to the customers, and knowing what a remarkable person you yourself are and what you do for mindset. Can you share your top tips and what you do in your personal life, as well as what you recommend to the founders in your portfolio?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you that know me, I'm very disciplined about taking care of my mindset. So I have this saying, I think I got it from Jay Shetty. I think he said this, around weeds and seeds of your mind. So your mind is like a garden, and you need to tend it. So you have weeds that you need to pull out and seeds that you need to cultivate so they can grow. So that's like my baseline belief about how I manage my mindset. So I'm a really structured person, and I know for me to feel good about myself, I need to have some sort of routine. It's just the way I'm built. So every morning I have my own time. I used to think this was selfish, but after having a child and, also wanting to continue with my career, I know I need this time. So every morning, what works for me is I meditate, I journal, and then I exercise. And I will not give that up for anything. Even when I'm feeling rubbish, even just walking for 5 minutes, it's like I'm doing something for myself. And also I feel like I'm achieving. So when I meditate and I walk or exercise, I'm like, you know, good on you, Julie. You've achieved already for the day, and it's like 7 a.m. So it's also being really, really kind to yourself. So particularly, this is something I talk to my founders that I mentor a lot about. So when I hear them say, I'm just not doing well, I'm just not getting any traction, it's really important how we talk to ourselves. So thoughts become things. And I really, really believe that. So if you believe that you're really not doing well, you probably won't do well that day. So I always catch, if it's myself or anyone I'm mentoring or speaking to that day, I'm very mindful of the words that I say, and I am mindful of the words that I pick up in other people, because what you say to yourself frames your life. So we have to be very careful if we're joking and saying, oh, but I'm just not good at that. I'm just not good at sales, or I'm just not good at marketing. Well, guess what? You're not going to be good at either of them. And this sounds really, kind of, well, that's logical. It makes sense, but it's amazing how much we don't pay attention to what we say and how we treat ourselves. And that has been a very long journey for me. Like I'm still on the journey of being kind to myself, but I'm much better at it than I used to be.
I love what you say, thoughts become actions. You cannot pour from an empty cup. So we must take care of ourselves. And this is especially applicable to females that we see around. We are sort of having a mindset which prioritizes others first. And in doing them good, we often end up doing bad to ourselves and consequently back to the ecosystem around us without knowing that. I read this beautiful quote that you must take compliments as seriously as you do insults.
Yes, that's lovely. I like that.
And I it completely resonated with me, Julie. Now I just want to understand, you've been recognized as one of the top 35 angel investors in the UK, and you're reshaping the ecosystem. Thank you for that, by the way. But what are the changes that you see for yourself in the larger, broader angel investing landscape since you entered?
So some of the things that I would really like to see is more of I am seeing it now, to be honest. Like, again, I'm very focused on female-led investments, and equally, investing in diverse teams, because I think it's really important that we have a more equal view, an equal playing field about what's available in the marketplace. And we know that female founders make amazing CEOs. Like, if you look at some VCs are doing an analysis on their portfolio, and they're actually noticing through pure facts and data that their female founders are performing much better than their counterparts. And it's just because of this more balanced approach. And also, it's not all about, and I'm not trying to dump on males at all. I have a son, so I'm totally for equality. But what I am saying is, we are, bringing your female angle and your femininity into your business is not a bad thing either. So another thing that I'm really seeing is, when I speak to my founders, I'm seeing them say, you know what, I just want to slow down for a moment. And really review what I'm doing and making sure I'm making the right decisions, which is amazing, because what we've been taught in startup land is just to go at 100 miles per hour and think about it later. So this has been something that I've actually heard quite a few times just this week. And it's something that's landed and sat with me, because I think sometimes, you do need to slow down to speed up. And I'm not saying that you have to slow down for weeks or months, but maybe just taking that moment to really think about the decisions we're making, and if it's right for your business, your investors, and your customers. So that's something that I actually see it's changing, and I'm so thankful for that.
Thank you. I mean, Google has always had this 20% time theory where they encourage their staff to take some time off and think about side projects, side hobbies, and often good things have come out of it. In fact, father of Facebook, and Mark Zuckerberg would, but father of Facebook, Orkut, was actually born as a side project in that free time. So this theme has been resonating through our conversation, which is giving yourself time to think about what you're doing, meditation, silent retreats, overcoming your ego. It's interesting that without even consciously having talking about these things, they've come up in our conversation. And these are some of the things that we quite often talk about in our yoga and mindfulness classes. What do you think about these practices generally in your time, at your home, in your life?
Personally, cannot live without them. So even my son, who's 6, he and I do yoga together. My husband does yoga, and it's purely not because it's cool and not because it's the in thing to do, but what we're realizing is, I think to your point earlier, being silent and quiet is really important. And it also helps you reflect on what you're doing, why you do things, and how you feel about yourself. So if there's more of that going on, not just in your home, but then we can radiate that in our businesses, I think it's incredibly important. I was speaking to a female founder, Lamnia from Journify. She's also amazing woman. And she was saying that every day in her calendar, she puts an 11 a.m. walk and she makes it visible so all of her team know that it's okay to take a moment and just have an hour to themselves. So this whole way of, I find it what's really beautiful. And although this virus has, been so hard on everyone and it feels like we're out of control, but what it's really shown me personally is a reimagined way of working. So I don't need to be in an office so people can see me 9 to 6. That whole, I mean, I never agreed with that in the first place, but that whole concept has been completely broken down. Like, you don't need to see me to know I'm doing work. I don't need to see my team, etc. So this whole process has really made a lot of people, and me included, rethink, how do I want to live my life? And what are my new non-negotiables? And some of those are, I used to have a nanny take my son to school every day because I had to get into the office. I don't do that anymore. My new non-negotiable is I need that time and space and quietness with my son in the morning to get him to school. And then our whole day is just transformed by having that connection time in the morning. So I think this is just the beginning of a reimagined way of living. And although it's heartbreaking what's happening right now, I think we're going to, reflect in 12 to 18 months. And it's really going to hopefully improve a lot of how we're living in this world today.
Beautiful.
I answered your question, but yeah, I answered the question I wanted to answer.
No, beautiful. These are some of the practical examples, and that's what I was going for. In fact, so much so that the Next UK, the retailer, they've released a recent trading statement, and in that they make some really bold comments about working from home. So, and to see an organization of that stature acknowledge that, in quotes, corporate machinery was found to hold back those more able and promote the status quo with people stuck up in bureaucracy.
Yeah.
It was so refreshing for somebody of that size to finally say the things that we've all been feeling for so long. The time taken in the commutes, the time taken in bureaucracy while at work. It's pure sheer productivity. Sure, there are some downsides like missing anecdotal conversation, missing some creativity or spontaneous moments. But in terms of cost balance, I think this works out definitely much better for a lot of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good point around, connectivity. So with your team. So for me, what's on my mind right now. So I started a new role during isolation. So I have only met half of my team, and I've been at the company for 3 months. And I just met, you know, some of them this week.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been talking multiple times a day, every day. So this is the new way of working. But I guess for me, what's on my mind, and I'd be interested to know if your community has been talking about this as well, is how do we ensure that our graduates and people who are just joining the workforce, you know, feel connected and feel that they're learning? Because that's something that, although I love working from home and the commutes, I'm loving that I don't have to commute every day. The connection days with my team, particularly those who are new into the workforce, is really important to them and to me. Because if I learned if I remember how I learned starting, is I learned by osmosis, right? I learned by being around the company, because the culture is the way you do things around here. And if you're not in it, in the actual business, how do you learn what that is? And so how do you learn how to run a meeting if you're never, you know, watching your boss because you're not a part of those meetings, or whatever that looks like? So that's something that's on my mind, that I think this reimagined way that we're going to live in the future, we have to be mindful of, well, how do we connect, and what do those connection days look like? Is it unstructured time, so we are just together and can be creative? But what does that look like? And that's something that's on my mind right now.
That's such a valid point. In fact, it's making me think about some of the young people that we are working with. And what I have found useful is, in fact, more systems and more processes. So they have access to all the data that we're working on currently as we iterate. So more and more collaborative tools, which is on one side of the spectrum, which is bringing in more structure and organization and inclusivity, making sure they're part of all the calls that they should be, they over communicating. But equally on the other spectrum, talking about their life, talking about what they're doing, what their aspirations are, mid-checks, feedback loops, inviting them for the feedback, fresh pair of eyes, their thoughts. And I think a combination of these two work really well. But it's such a good point on consciously including these in our work days, so that it doesn't become an oversight.
Yeah, there's some particularly for the graduates coming into the workforce, that's what's on my mind. I have 2 graduates in my team, and it's really funny because I forgot how I felt as a graduate. So when, I don't know about you, but when I first started, I felt like I just needed to be busy all the time. And so if you have 2 or 3 hours free, you're just like, oh my goodness, you know, am I doing the right thing? So it's kind of putting ourselves back in the shoes of, you know, the people just coming into the workforce and thinking, well, how can I best support them in this new format? So, yeah.
I know you are a woman of action, Julie. You're always working on something. And when I say working on something, I mean outside your job, outside your angel investing, outside the coaching of your portfolio of founders. So tell us a little bit about what your recent initiatives are, what you're working on, what's your secret project?
Yeah, I've got a couple. So you're actually involved in one of them. It's called Stories Over Stats. And to be quite honest, I've slipped on my timeline of wanting to get this out, but that's okay because I'm going to be kind to myself. I've been really busy, so it's fine. And the whole premise of that is my goal is to interview 100 fantastic female founders who are reshaping the startup ecosystem. And the underpinning purpose of why I'm doing this is it really leads back to the answer to my first question that I was sharing with everyone. I came to this point where I just felt like I didn't have, what was my purpose? What was I being defined by as myself? And I realized that I chose to be defined by stats, like the stats. What school did you go to? You know, who are you working for? What part of the country do you live in? Do you live in a good area, a bad area? So all of these superficial material stats. And that did not make me happy. And what this initiative is about is to promote women to be proud and live by their stories and to share their stories because they have more power than their stats. And so that's what this whole initiative is about. I'm looking actually to get funding to get published because I'd like it to get published and then distributed to high schools and accelerators and to universities to really encourage women everywhere to reimagine what their life could be. And, you know, people like yourself, Shiti, could be an absolute inspiration to them. So that's one initiative. And then I have another initiative around, it's a mindset piece. And I don't know where it will go, but it's really around, we have all of these amazing accelerators, and I love the programs. I'm a part of some of them in terms of mentoring and running sessions. But for me, the thing that's missing is this mindset piece. Like we push our founders to go so fast, so quickly, raise funds, but how are we helping them cultivate a good sense of self-worth, and to detangle themselves from their business? Because actually, you hear from a lot of founders who then exit their company and just think, well, who am I and what's my purpose? So I'm really looking at working with another two amazing females on this piece around how we can incorporate a module around mindsets. But to your point, I actually interviewed you and said, you know, would you like something like this? And you said, make sure it's tangible, because us founders are really busy and it's all nice to have these sessions, but we need to take something actionable away. So that's what I'm currently working on, those two things. And I'm really excited about, I don't know where it will go, but I'm excited just to be living by what lights me up.
I am so excited about both of your projects. I think they're absolutely the need of the hour. I mean, we are in a different kind of world today. Everybody's got a level playing field. I mean, such a young startup as us in a fitness wellness space now competes with the biggies. We are listed on the same platform that Calm or Headspace was. We're covered in the same press coverage where Headspace is, and in a matter of few months. And that's made possible because of the abundance of opportunities. Mm-hmm. And more than ever, it's now that therefore we need to overcome these statistics, these previous status signals. Some of the top universities, no doubt about the quality of talent that comes in, but what about that that gets left out? And it's not just driven by the top 0.0001% of people. The technology now democratizes the opportunities available to all of us, and there's no better time than today for initiatives such as like these.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm really passionate about, because, and you've heard me talk about it so much, because I am not one of those top people. I didn't go to the top university to do my undergraduate, and I always felt bad about myself. I wasn't naturally smart. I've always had to work at it. You know, I don't naturally just know things. Like my husband has this amazing ability just to absorb things and then, you know, talk about it like he's a professor. And I am not that person. And it made me feel bad about myself for so long, but actually this is my superpower. My superpower is being real and, you know what, knowing who I am and being honest when I don't know something. Because do you know what? Most people didn't know the answer. And if someone doesn't ask, we never collectively build our knowledge. So right now is, you know what, if I can be an angel investor, I can absolutely teach you how to do it. And I want to help other people do it. And I want to democratize it, because now is the time to do it. Absolutely.
Wonderful. Being real, relatable, and revolutionary. I think that's your superpower.
I'm going to steal those three.
You so are. The great thing about you is your candor, your honesty, your transparency, which is why I think your followers and your fans connect to you. And thank you for always being this constant stream of relatable, grounded knowledge, which is tangible, which is not rooted in theory and just philosophical principles. Because you've experienced all sides of the table, it comes even with bigger credentials, hearing them from you. So thank you for being who you are, the honest and the transparent person that you are. I could go talking for hours and hours, but I think this is a good time for me to pause and just look at some of the brilliant questions that come in. I think one of the topics that we haven't gone into detail is hiring and building the team. So Julie wants to know, Carrie wants to know, what are the top tips for hiring at an early stage startup?
So I think one of the top things that I've learned, and through supporting my founders as well, is to be really, really clear on what you need that role to do. So for example, in the past, I've seen a lot around, and me as well, when I was in this process, being really vague about what I needed. And then when I was interviewing people, liking the person and thinking, oh, yes, they can grow into the role. That's okay when you're at a corporate. But when you're in a startup and you need people with a certain ability or capabilities, you have to be very, very clear on what those are and hire for those. And this is even more important when you have a tech-enabled company, because you need to make sure that you're hiring for the right skills so then they can hit the ground running. So I think clarity on what you need them to do is really key. And in addition to that, there's some really amazing platforms like TechTree that are really supporting founders in finding the right, predominantly tech partners, because if you make the wrong hire at as an early stage, as we all know, it can be quite detrimental. So mine is around clarity, and then looking for the avenues of support to be able to get access to that talent. And if you have investors, hound your investors. A part of your asks every week when you send out your weekly email, if that's what you do, and if you don't, I recommend you do that because it's really important. Or your fans or your advisory board, every week you send out an ask. I have an ask. Please, I'm after this capability. I need this type of person. Can you help me? And if you continue to, you're meant to be hounding them. That's the purpose. And if they don't respond to you, go direct and ask them again. So that's my top tips.
Got it. Ask and you shall receive. It is
very clear. Clarity is really important on what you need.
Got it. Got it. So there's another question relating to that, which is, how do you keep your team motivated when they're chasing ambitious targets?
Well, I think it's all about how you create the targets themselves. So personally, when I've had ambitious targets within my team right now. It's a collaborative process of how we got to that ambitious target, and you want to ensure that everyone's bought into that. Equally, if you're not having daily stand-ups, I recommend them because they're amazing. I believe everyone who has a startup would have multiple chats a day, is being really open and transparent about where things are not working. Mm-hmm. So it's great to have this big target of sales or whatever you're trying to go after, but really have clarity as why, if you're not achieving it, why, and how can you pivot and move? And equally, if it's not working, okay, we're going to have a conversation and sit down about, honestly, do we need to rethink that target? That's also okay, because we never want to be led by vanity metrics, right? Because having 1 million followers and all that sounds lovely, but actually, are they going to convert to customers? Mm-hmm. And if not, focus on the conversion to customers, not getting this huge, 1 million followers target.
That's very nicely said. Netflix is famous for their culture. And in the recent book by Reed Hastings, he talks about this radical transparency within the organization. So you mentioned the stand-ups. The meetings there are famous for people calling out each other as long as they aim to assist. So it needs to be actionable, and it needs to be in the spirit of assisting. An example which stands out for me when I read the book was the marketing team was delivering a major presentation for a new launch and was trying to get the technology teams and other teams on board with it. Sorry, it was the other way. The technology team was delivering a presentation for a new feature, new launch, and was trying to get marketing team on board. Yeah. And in doing the presentation, because it was such an important occasion, they were nervous or whatever, they were losing the crowd, and the crowd was asking the question. And there was this vicious circle where the tech team thought that they are asking the questions just to beat them down, and they wouldn't answer that properly. And the marketing team therefore thought, since they were not answering the question properly, they were not fully prepared, and so on and so forth, until somebody at the back of the room called out, Hey, you're losing the room. You need to slow down. You're making good progress. Please explain us the features properly. And the flow completely changed. And it was supposed to be one really big launch for Netflix, and it worked out all well. But in that critical moment, where the two departments would have gotten isolated, had that honest, genuine feedback not being shared and equally not being accepted in the right spirit, it could have been a different story.
Absolutely. And this is something that I'm super passionate about. I'm glad you mentioned the radical transparency, because this is a live example in my current world, is where, when you are in a meeting and you have this feeling, you're like, oh, I don't feel like we're in alignment, but I'm going to leave it because I don't have the headspace.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you feel like that, stop and call it out. And it's not, when I say call it out, some people feel like, oh, you're calling at me as a human. No, I'm not. If you're doing that, then that's the wrong way to do it. It's like, it's not about the person, it's about the issue at hand. So I'm a big believer in let's not make it personal, because everyone's a good human. We're all trying to do the best we can. It's about the situation that we're trying to cooperatively solve.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's something in that, calling it out in the time. But if you don't, and we all don't, right? Because we're human, retrospectives are really important. So we know in this agile way of working that you have tea ceremonies, like stand-ups every day, but I have a retrospective with the team every week, just to think, what worked well, what didn't, and how can we build on this in the future.
I like the idea of retrospectives. And with 5 minutes left now, I think I'm going to take the questions are still trickling in. I'm going to make it last 3 questions. So the first question, I really love this question. It's from Alison. Thanks, Alison. So we've talked about how we are sort of falling behind and what all needs to be done for female founders. Alison wants to think positively here, and she asks, what are the advantages of being a female founder today?
I think the space in general is blowing up. So for example, not that I'm trying to be excluding male counterparts, but I'm a part of some angel communities that exclusively invest in female founders, or a company that has a female founder, because we're trying to make sure we're lifting up that community. Equally, I think that female founders, there's loads of statistics coming in that they're very good at running businesses and they're very level-headed. So being able to make sure you can, demonstrate that is really important in investor conversations, or if you're trying to raise capital. I also think the community, like the sisterhood that I love and I often rely on, is something so beautiful that's happening right now. It's like, how can we work? I always say, collaboration over competition, right? There is a unique space for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we work together, we're going to get so much more further than if we try to compete. Because I think that's the old way of working. Like, make sure you grease the pole on your way up. No. That's not the way to operate anymore. It's about how we can collaborate together. And I think we can really demonstrate this as females of how to do this really well. So they're the 3 key things that come to mind instantly. Again, I don't want to be excluding our gorgeous male counterparts. As I said, my husband's my biggest supporter, and so is my son. But I think, now's the time. Like it's particularly for the landscape is changing, and it really is exciting to see.
Very nice. The second last question is from Kathy. And she asks, what traits like resilience do you look out for in women founders, in particular beyond the business idea?
I think the first trait I really look for is openness and curiosity. Because if you're open and curious, and I recognize this from my own experience when I had my ego trap, I was not open enough, and I was almost scared and fearful about being curious because what I would uncover. So I really look for someone who's quite open, mm-hmm. and also curious about asking why. And, you don't have to take what I say or any other person who's giving you advice as golden. Mm-hmm. If they ask me, well, why do you think that? I'm really happy to answer, but that also demonstrates that they're curious about learning and they have an open mindset. I think that is probably the most important trait that I look for, because that flows onto everything. Because if you're open, then you're open to if someone comes to you with a new feature that they can see within, like your software engineer, for example, this is how, I'm going to give a quick example. So, you know, on Amazon, how it provides you with, you buy a laptop and then it suggests a laptop bag and then a mouse. Well, actually that feature idea came from an engineer who was doing some analysis on consumer data and said, do you know what, if we actually test this, I think we could triple our sales, or, you know, it's going to be so much more compounding our revenue. And if the product manager at the time was really closed-minded and said that's never going to work, then that feature wouldn't have been implemented, or could have taken a lot longer to be implemented. So I'm also always about being really open to reverse learning or reverse mentoring. So being very open and curious, because if you're always learning, you're always going to be improving. So that's the one thing I always look out for.
Very nice. So guys, be childlike, keep the child in you alive. Cassie asks, what key information do you present to a potential investor when asking for first investment? So I guess the question is, when you send a pitch deck, what are the top things that you look out for sifting out through the pitch decks?
I mean, for me personally, I like a really very crisp pitch deck. So I really like yours. Shinty, well, I've reviewed yours. I really love yours. First of all, I personally always look for a story. So why are you doing this? So if you can really clearly articulate why you believe as the founder, this is the problem you're going to solve and why, that's something I look for first. The second thing I look for is a really clear view of, it has to pass the plane test. I'm not sure if everyone on the call knows what that means but if you leave your document on a plane and someone reads it, I clearly understand within 7 minutes of reading your pitch deck what you're trying to sell and what problem you're trying to solve and why it's important. So that's the overarching principle. So I look for what problem you're trying to solve and why you're passionate about solving it and why you're the person to solve it. If you're also pitching your product within the deck, I need to really clearly understand, like, what's the size of the prize you're going after? So what's the market? And then how is your product going to, over a period of time, going to capitalize on that market? I always do like to see something around competitors. So even if you say, oh, we have no competitors, well, show me the closest one. And why are you different to those? And then the last one's around, okay, so tell me what you're going to do with the cash that you're asking for. And this may be controversial, but I'm going to say it. And I did say it to you as well, Shiti, around when you're asking for cash. Personally, I like, in the early days, yes, tell me about what roles you need. You know, tell me specifically what you're going to spend the money on. But if it's around stuff like, oh, we want to go buy, I'm not saying you said this, but I have read pitch decks like, oh, we want to go buy office furniture. So we need chairs and stuff like that. I know you need that, but in the early days, like, you got to be very, you know, tight with the cash. Hold off on the chairs. You know, save that cash, get yourself another contract engineer to implement those features that you want, that are on your roadmap. So when you're asking for cash, be really clear what you're going to spend it on, and make sure you're putting it in priority of order of what you need to spend it on and why. And if you're super early stage, also, it's nice when someone comes to me and says, here's why I want you to be an investor. I think you can bring this to me. Personally, I get a crap load of almost cut and paste invites on LinkedIn, and they're just asking for like 60K.
Oh.
And I'm like, dude, I'm never going to invest in you. Like, you haven't even said, hi, Julie. You've just said hi because it's a cut and paste. So if you're going to ask an investor for money, like, try to put some effort around it. Not saying, you know, not saying people on this call wouldn't, but it's surprising how many inboxes I get. And then some people get very cross that I don't respond to them. I'm like, you didn't even say my name, like, as if I'm going to waste time and respond to you.
Makes total sense. And this is something I've heard time and again from respected angels. So I can totally appreciate and understand. And I did say, Julie, that was the last question, but I'm going to take this one. And sorry, guys, this has got to be last. We're already 3 minutes over, but I love this. And Jane wants to know that any sectors you see particularly advantages for women founders?
I mean, not really. I think that women naturally gravitate to certain sectors because they just see a problem that they want to solve. So, and my view of the world is probably in the view of femtech. So I see a lot of females within this field because, you know, they haven't seen period products that are solving their problems. So they want to start a startup to solve those, or IVF or menopause. So mostly it's female founders I'm seeing in that space. But I think women can do anything they want. So if they have a passion and it's in construction tech, go for it. Because actually, you know, it's the what do they call it? The first principles thinking, like in science. If you are removed from that whole space, like you're not in construction as an example, but you believe you can improve it, actually your first principles thinking, because you're not in the industry, could solve the problem itself because of the way you're coming at the problem, because you don't have all of this baggage. So I think we can go into any industry, but what I have seen, there's two in particular I've seen women dominate, and that's around obviously femtech. And the second one's around anything around the collaboration space. So women, I met with an amazing founder who's really reimagining how we use different sites to collaborate communities, cross-pollination between communities and cross-promote, which I'm super excited about. But I've seen a lot of female founders within that space too. So they're the two that stand out. But I think, you know what, you can, if you have an idea and you're passionate about it, go for it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Julie. Thanks for your time and for all the tips that you've shared. Is there any last thoughts before we let you go for people on the call, people who would be listening to you?
No, I just really, if you've tuned in, so thank you for bearing with my really nasal Australian accent. I appreciate that. If you want to connect with me, I can share my details like on your page. But I'm, you know, active on Instagram. I try to get to LinkedIn and respond to messages. Sometimes it's hard, but reach out, ask me questions. I'm here. I'm really excited to be connected in with this community. So, and I'm really grateful that you've taken an hour to speak to me. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Julie. Thanks for being so kind with all your tips, data, details, sharing everything. On that note, this is not just it. We always have an Easter egg towards the end in the spirit of giving away. We've spoken a lot about these testing times today, mindset, and how the burnout is taking a toll on us. We thought of giving our yoga for burnout classes. Every weekend we have special classes live with teachers, world-class experts, and we want to be wanting to give away those free. So please use yoga, YOGA, as the coupon code when you sign out. You can go on letsbreathehappy.com or just type a short URL, which is lbh.yoga, letsbreathehappy.yoga, or letsbreathehappy.com. And when you sign up for any class, especially tomorrow and day after, which is yoga for burnout, and use the coupon code yoga, you get that for free. And do let us know for any feedback, any thoughts, tips, any questions that we were not able to take today. Feel free to let us know and we'll get them over to Julie. On that note, thank you so much, Julie. Thank you to everyone who joined in today, and thank you for people who would be listening to us. Julie, I extend you the best wishes, the warmest wishes from ourselves at Breathe Happy, as well as our community. You truly are an angel. I believe in that. I genuinely do.
You are so kind to me. I just want to have you in my pocket all day, like, you know, saying nice things about me. So thank you so much. You're amazing. I think what you're doing is phenomenal.
Thank you. On that note, have a lovely evening, a day, and the weekend, everyone. Hopefully see you on the match tomorrow. And till then, goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, Julie.